मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य महाणीस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. O self-effulgent Lord, be revealed in my consciousness. May the truths of the scriptures come to me. May they shine forth in my life. May not what I learn from them ever forsake me. Let me live my life day and night according to their teachings. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Let us feel our true divine nature as the infinite ocean of existence, consciousness, bliss, the Chetanananda. And our ego is like a salt doll jumping in it. As I jump in it, my awareness, my consciousness is I and the world. My likes and dislikes, but as the ego is getting dissolved, this distinction starts disappearing. The separating lines between various different shapes and their corresponding names, they have become hazy. the ego dissolves. All separation has dissolved. No trace of I and mine distinctions. Time and space have dissolved. All is the existence immortal. There is no coming and going. It is consciousness absolute, without any divisions. It is bliss absolute. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So friends, let us begin our today's discussion on this extraordinary biography of Sri Ramakrishna, which brings out, as we saw, the human and divine aspect of the incarnation. While it is the biography of Sri Ramakrishna, we can relate this discussion to all other incarnations of God as well. So there is the human aspect and there is the divine aspect. So let us begin with our opening chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham shravanamangalam shrimadattatam bhuvi grananti te bhurida janaha. So last class we were discussing that while one cannot become Sri Ramakrishna, not that our height and appearance will be like Sri Ramakrishna, but we will mold our lives. That is what we can do, mold our lives according to the molds created by Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna has mentioned many times that I have made the mold. Now you put your lives into that mold. So, thus our lives will be like Sri Ramakrishna in the spiritual sense. Means we also will be having the realization of the divine, that I am divine. Mm. Our life will be also full of bliss. It is our love will become completely transformed love. It is not the selfishness and the worldly social adjustments passing for love, but it is the love because we will see that the same self actually dwells in all. So that is a different class of love. And just to give an analogy, something that we can easily feel, that it will be like the love that we feel between the various different limbs of our own personality, our own body. We never see that one hand becoming jealous of another hand. It is suppose the left hand is holding money, the right hand doesn't get jealous. Hey, I do most of the work and you are holding money? No. There is no such idea at all because of that kind of love. We will start feeling the love of that type when we put our lives in the mold of Sri Ramakrishna. So this is what we have been reading on page 705. And then we move to the next paragraph. That in the spiritual world, the great teachers who have modeled extraordinary and entirely new ways of living are worshipped by people as avatars, incarnations of God. The new way, a new pathway has to be made because of the changing circumstances. It is, you see, the circumstances change. Those, from the much older generation staying here would know that before this Interstate 95 was chalked out and made, there was the post road. Post road would be just following similar path, but a narrow road, right from Florida into the Maine and Canada it would go. So now that is okay, but that is with the changed situation, and that is not going to serve the purpose except for people like our Naomi who hate highways. So it is otherwise a new road had to be made, a broad road, quicker, faster route has to be made with the changed situation. So Sri Ramakrishna's life was like that, making a new road, and every incarnation has that as the purpose. Because the old paths get all overgrown by the forest, they become all useless, the populations move from here to there, so those paths are no longer that helpful. So new pathways are to be made. In the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one gets a very beautiful description of why there is this incarnation coming again and again, God incarnating again and again. Why? Once God has incarnated, and that should be sufficient. Lord says no. Actually, it is in some religions like Christianity and Islam. They don't, of course, use the word God incarnation, but a similar idea they hold about Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad. So, a similar idea that why again it is necessary for God to incarnate. Many Christians say, well, Jesus is there, Jesus gives salvation. There is nobody else is capable of giving salvation, and so it is superfluous to have other incarnation after Jesus. He has taken care of everything. The followers of Prophet Muhammad also are of the opinion that he had made a new path and everybody can go by that path. No need afterwards to have another pathfinder. But Bhagavad Gita clearly and with lot of rationale behind gives the teaching that, see, I had proclaimed, because the person is the same, I had proclaimed the same truth and the same yoga I had described earlier for ages. Ages ago I did it. But then while it continued for some time, sakale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa, because of the passage of time, that thing got corrupt. It becomes, you see, misinterpreted. Why? It gives the reason also that Anushtatrunam kamodbhavat. Shankaracharya gives this as the reason behind it, that those who are to follow this path, now they have their own desires, and so they don't want to exactly follow that path, because then it means giving up what they like. So they suitably alter it to, you see, so that they can hold on to their desires, their other ambitions, and still feel that I am following the path told by God. So God sees that, well, I have to again come and give my message. So the God now appears in a form that is conducive to the present age. Not that it negates what the other incarnations have said or done, but strengthens that, explains it in a better way. So it is, this is described here that avatars discover new doctrines and new paths in the religious world, and they transmit spiritual powers by mere touch or even by mere sight. It is, their minds are never attracted to the glamour of lust and gold in this transitory world. As we study their lives, we understand that they were born to show others the way. So there is no other purpose in their life. That is how we can see that their own liberation was not the purpose. They were never bound as such, except the bondage that they have taken. Sometimes I had given the analogy to illustrate this, that it is like somebody who is going to the prison to teach the prisoners. Many go, to teach yoga to the prisoners or some other discipline. So they go to the prison, but they are going by their own will. And they are not, they are in the prison, but they are not incarcerated. They are free to go and come out. A prisoner would not be able to do that unless that prison term is complete. So, this is how the teachings of the incarnations, they are assuming human body is of this type, that they look like human beings, but they do not have any bondage of human being. It is whatever bondage as it appears is what they have willingly taken up. In that sense, it is not a bondage at all. So, that is how this incarnation is. That there is the bondage, but it is not a binding bondage. It is, it appears. One scholar, a saint actually, one great saint, calls it in Sanskrit anadhyasta vivarta. That means there is no superimposition, no ignorance there, and yet there is a spatial manifestation. So that is called the vivarta, is that there is the appearance, but there is no content as such to that appearance except the ultimate truth. So it is like the snake appearing as rope, or rope appearing as snake, whatever, one thing appearing as another. Now the other thing is created there without any creation. Without any creation, you see that the snake is there seen, although actually there is only rope. So now that kind of creation is called vivarta. So this incarnation's body is like vivarta, and all our bodies also are like that, vivarta. They are really not there. God alone is. The difference is, in our case, there is what is called adhyasa, means superimposition. So we are not aware of the rope. This point is to be understood. That there is, in case of incarnation, it is like this book is called Lila Prasanga. It is the acting. It is like one who is acting, like say Othello, a John Smith acting like Othello. Now while he is acting as Othello, he has the complete knowledge that he is John Smith and not Othello. While the play is going on, if somebody calls him, "Hey John, how are you?" he won't respond, of course, because that will spoil the play. But he is quite aware of that. So, an incarnation of God, while assuming the human form like an actor, is quite aware of the divine nature. So it is described here that before we witnessed the divine life of Sri Ramakrishna, we were incapable of understanding the lives and messages of the other avatars such as Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Shankara, Chaitanya and others. We considered the extraordinary events of their lives to be exciting stories invented by successive generations of disciples to lure more members to their groups. Well, I too was a victim to this thought, till I studied the life of Sri Ramakrishna. I used to think that this Rama and Krishna, or only funny stories, interesting to read, and may have some moral lessons here and there. But actually, that never happened. So it is just the stories that people have created. It is, I used to consider that the life of Rama is a novel written by Valmiki. It is not the life, but there was nothing like Rama, like somebody writes. What is that famous book of stories that children read? 4 or 5 volumes are there. Ah, no, the recent one, compare. Yeah, Harry Potter, yeah. Now there is no Harry Potter, but then Harry Potter fans have created all those, those places as it were that Harry Potter actually lived in this place. So it is funny, but that is how gradually people start believing that this is like real. Sherlock Holmes stories are all fiction, but now they have a Baker Street where he used to supposedly lived, never lived because it was not a real person there. It is a fiction created by Arthur Conan Doyle, but became so popular, and people thought, that their minds were filled with that thing. So now there is all that museum, Sherlock Holmes, the Baker Street residence and all, as if he lived there. So I used to think of Rama, Krishna, as if these nice stories, actually there was no such character. But because the stories are so wonderful, unbelievable, but after reading Sri Ramakrishna's life, studying Sri Ramakrishna's life, then not only I started feeling that spiritual wisdom there, I started feeling it in all other incarnations as well. So, this is how the new incarnations do not remove the previous incarnations, but lend strength to them also. So, that is how he mentions here. We had read and heard that divine and human traits coexist wonderfully in an avatara's body. But before we met Sri Ramakrishna, we could not imagine how childlike simplicity and strong masculinity could coexist harmoniously in a man. Many say that they were attracted by the master's childlike nature. He was like a 5-year-old boy. An innocent child always inspires affection and protective instincts in all. Such feelings arose in people who had met Sri Ramakrishna, overwhelming them and drawing them to him, even though he was an adult in the time. This is true to some extent, but it was not only the master's pure and childlike nature that attracted people. As people approached the master with love and joy, feelings of reverence and devotion would rise in their minds simultaneously, indicating that the cause of that attraction was the inner adamantine masculinity covered by his tender childlike simplicity. And describing the superhuman character of Ramakrishna, or Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, the famous poet Bhavabhuti wrote, "Who can comprehend the minds of superhuman soul?" It is very difficult to apprehend, understand, superhuman souls it is, which are stronger than a thunderbolt and softer than a flower, that it is mridune kusumadapi, that it is vajradapi kathorani, and that is what Bhavabhuti writes, that vajradapi kathorani mridune kusumadapi. So, and that is how lokottaranam chetanse, that their personalities are like that, and they are very strong personalities. And yet they have a childlike, very simple nature. So both these seemingly contradictory qualities one see in Sri Ramakrishna. Then it was, he says, tells some stories about Kamarpukur, that how these both things happened there. Kamarpukur is surrounded by vast stretches of land covered with green paddy fields. Before harvest, the fields look like an ocean of green. After the harvest, the bare soil resembles an ocean of grey. And the village itself is like a cluster of beautiful islands, each one covered with bamboo groves and banyan, peepal, date palm, mango and other trees, with the peasants clean, mud-built thatched huts, nestled amongst them. The area has many large lakes and ponds, such as Haldar Pond, which are surrounded and shaded by tall palm trees. Humming bees hover over lotuses in the lakes. In the village are many small temples of brick and stone. Among them is the famous temple to the old Shiva. The ruins of Fort Mandaran are close to the village, and in the outskirts lie two ancient cremation grounds. Kamarpukur has pasture land covered with green grass, a dense mango grove, and a small zigzag canal called Bhuti's Canal. More than half of the village is encircled by a long public road from Bardwan to Puri, which is thronged by pilgrims. This is Kamarpukur, the birthplace of Sri Ramakrishna. The Vaishnava religion, founded by Chaitanya and his disciples, is prevalent in Kamarpukur. The peasants relieve their fatigue by joyfully singing the devotional songs of the Vaishnava poets while they plow, and in the evening after work. This religion is based upon a simple and poetic faith that pervades the hearts of these remote villagers who live far from the rough waves of the struggle for existence. A child's heart is fertile ground for such faith and religion. Even so, the childlike nature of young Ramakrishna was regarded as unusual in this village. Although people did not understand many of his actions, they were amazed at seeing the depth and one-pointedness of purpose that he brought to his actions. That is what was there extraordinary. He was child like other children, very playful, and in that village yet many caught their Sri Ramakrishna's this one pointed devotion and his attention on everything. So it is very extraordinary for a child to do that. When the boy Ramakrishna heard a narrator of the Puranas say, a person becomes pure by chanting the name of Rama, he wondered, why then does the narrator still needed ablution? He understood the idea of purity in a very physical sense, as per his, that is how it is child, there is the child's appearance. So, after hearing a theatrical performance only once, the boy could memorize the entire script and would reenact it in the mango grove with his friends. Passerby who saw their wonderful performance and heard their music were so overwhelmed that they forgot to continue to their destinations. Ramakrishna's talent was manifest in several areas, making images, painting pictures of deities, mimicry, music, and Sankirtan. Learning by heart the passages of the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavata, and other scriptures after hearing them only once and in deeply experiencing the beauty of nature. So, this is all a human aspect. It is Sri Ramakrishna as a human child. As in children, some child may have these abilities to memorize things, to enact plays, and all that. Sri Ramakrishna has that. The Master told us that he first expressed samadhi at the age of 6 or 7 when he saw a flock of white cranes flying against a black cloud, heavy rain. And that has been described earlier, that this contrast made him somehow feel inside that there is this conflict in this world, the dark cloud and the white cranes flying there, that beautiful contrast evoked the image of God's beauty in him, and he fell into samadhi. A special characteristic of this boy's mind was that he would become completely absorbed in any mood that came upon him. The villagers even now point to the courtyard of a merchant and tell this story. One day, the actor who was supposed to perform the role of Shiva in the drama Har Parvati Samvad, conversation of Shiva and Parvati, suddenly became ill. People asked Ramakrishna to take that role, and they dressed him as Shiva. But when he entered the stage in that courtyard as Shiva, he became motionless and lost outer consciousness for a long time. These events make it clear that although he was a child, boyish restlessness could not seize him. Whenever he saw or heard anything had attracted him, as the image so deeply imprinted itself in his mind that he could not stop until he had attained complete mastery over it and had expressed it in a new form. See, this is the divine. Many children would have this extraordinary memory, but it is human. What is divine? And those children will not go into divine ecstasy. It is Sri Ramakrishna that the divine aspect comes here, that he would go into samadhi. There were many instances in his early life to show that while he is a child, very playful, and yet there is this divine present there, which would make itself manifest when the occasion comes. So there is this Shiva, he is acting as Shiva. And not that he was planning to do that, and there was another boy who was to perform, but that boy fell sick. So Sri Ramakrishna was told, hey, fellow, you now become Shiva. I said, okay. And he was dressed as Shiva. All appearance was made like Shiva. And then, as he went to the stage, that appearance and the reality kind of merged. He became like Shiva, not only in appearance, but in the consciousness. He lost the sense of the outer world, and thus getting identified with Shiva, naturally the play came to a standstill, but that is something rare, and naturally people thought that this is something abnormal, in the sense there is probably some disease, like some epilepsy attacks, that Sri Ramakrishna might have had some epilepsy attacks. But one very different characteristic than the epileptic attacks, I am bringing it out because this was discussed here in this context earlier, and then many modern psychologists, and they have termed that Sri Ramakrishna actually was epileptic, and then he was a good actor. So he feigned this samadhi. He was getting into epileptic attacks, and then he became great man by feigning it as if it is samadhi. So, but there is a tremendous distinction, that it is after the epileptic attack, when that goes away, the person still remains very weak. Secondly, the awareness of the divine bliss is not there. It is Sri Ramakrishna always maintained that in these experiences he always felt a very special divine bliss. So this is something that we need to take into consideration before concluding that it was just an attack of epilepsy. No, it was not. So, although the young Ramakrishna did not study any books, his senses and mind developed quickly by encountering the external world. The guiding principle of his life was, I shall accept nothing until I have determined it to be true after thorough scrutiny. I shall implement in action whatever I learn. I shall not look down upon anything in this world unless I find it to be false. So only that which is untruth is being looked down upon. Nothing else. No person is being looked down upon. During his boyhood, the wonderfully talented Ramakrishna was sent to the village school, but his inquisitive childlike nature did not wane. He asked himself, what is the purpose of studying until late night and running over for the glosses of commentaries? Will this help me to attain the truth? That was his question. So, introspectiveness, that is not seen in children, that to examine things, understand. The playful nature, well, yes, all children have. But this ability to penetrate deep into the nature of things is not with all children. So, thinking of the school's teacher who had successfully completed the kind of education, he said to himself, "You will become as adept as he is in interpreting simple words in a complicated way." That is how the teachership is described, something that it is. We used to speak about one of our professors like that he has the great skill of explaining simple things in very complicated way. So what could be easily understood, when he explains it, it becomes completely difficult to grasp. So it is. You will make your life as he does by flattering wealthy people and collecting honorariums. You will study and teach the truths recorded in the scriptures, but you will not be able to experience them in your life, like an ass who carries sandalwood but cannot enjoy its fragrance. This is a saying in Sanskrit, that when a donkey is laden with a lot of sandalwood, now the donkey is experiencing only the weight, the burden, not the fragrance. So those who just carry lot of information and lot of learning, but they are not experiencing the ultimate truth. They are like that, Kharash Chandana Bharavahi, that a donkey is just an animal, a beast of taking load. So the brains get loaded by all information and cause a lot of havoc also there. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna saw, that more undigested information which is not put into practice, what does it do? It is like lot of food taken in and is not getting digested. So that is how it brings all the troubles in life. Ramakrishna therefore gave up his studies to concentrate on worshipping the blissful image of the Divine Mother. But even this gave him no peace. Again his mind questioned, is she truly the living blissful form of the Divine Mother, or merely a stone image? See, so many people do the worship. How many are intrigued by this question? Is that real? What is the reality behind this image? And there is the image, no doubt. But what is behind it, of what the image is of? So, the blissful Divine Mother is that got imaged as a stone here. Now, what does it mean? So, he prayed with earnestness. So, does she truly accept the flowers, fruits and sweets that I offer with devotion? Does a person by her gracious glance truly become free from all the bondage and see her? Or is this nothing but a long accumulated superstition of the human mind, given form by a strong imagination. Have human beings been thus deceived from time immemorial? He was anxious to resolve these doubts. At the same time, the seed of intense renunciation was beginning to sprout in his mind. He grew up and married, but it became impossible for him to enjoy the world without answering these questions. Every day his mind became absorbed in various solutions to these problems: marriage, family, planning for wealthy life, earning money, enjoyment, and even food and other physical necessities receded into useless memories. That is how his life became. Sri Ramakrishna's childlike nature was an object of ridicule for the worldly minded in Kamarpukur. When this same childlike nature came to full fruition in the temple garden of Dakshineshwar, worldly people there considered him to be mad, which was much more contemptible. The word mad is the proper translation, but what it means is that is not properly grown. It's a fully grown male body. But as it happens, in some cases, the intellectual age does not match the physical age of a person. So, therefore, they have to be schooled separately. That because although the body is, say, 12 years old, the intellectual age is maybe just 3 or 4 years old. So they thought Sri Ramakrishna has that kind of stunted intellectual growth. And so they could not understand this childlike nature of Sri Ramakrishna because of the simplicity that comes due to devotion and reliance on God. We cannot imagine it. It is told in scriptures like Chandogya Upanishad that one should study the scriptures. One should become adept gradually in all the scriptures. And then after that, becoming a scholar of scriptures, Pandityam Nirvidya Balyena Tishtaset. After all that scholarship is to be given up and remain like a simple child. Because the test of truth is simplicity. Nothing is simpler than truth. So, the truth is the simplest thing. And thus, when you know the truth, you become simple. All complicated things vanish in one's life. Then it is described that this is all description, the idea in this chapter should not be forgotten, that the confluence or simultaneous existence of Sri Ramakrishna as man and Sri Ramakrishna as God, both are visible. He is man for all to see. And yet it is a living divinity, God in his awareness. So, it is described here that it is a violent storm raged in Sri Ramakrishna's mind over a period of 12 years, and his lifeboat was imperiled by the dreadful waves of doubt and disbelief churned up by that terrible inner struggle. But his heroic heart was not shaken even in the face of imminent death, and he did not deviate from the course towards his goal. So that is what we see in the what is called sadhana of Sri Ramakrishna, the 12 years of such spiritual practice that he undertook, which is really beyond human conception. So that kind of practice he took up, and becoming adept in discipline after discipline. By every path he realized the same one goal, which is not possible for any ordinary human being except the incarnation of God. So that is the important thing. Endowed with faith in and passion for God, he methodically and steadily proceeded ahead. He left far behind him the worldly tumult of lust and gold, and what public opinion calls good and bad, merit and demerit, virtue and vice. The tidal wave of spiritual longing carried him speedily forward against the worldly current. Sri Ramakrishna's severe austerities and endless overflowing spiritual moods shattered his strong body and mind, shaping them into new form and giving them a new beauty. Thus was made a perfect instrument to hold and transmit great truth, great spirituality, and great power. This is how the mold was made. Sri Ramakrishna became a mold now with this tremendous spiritual practice. So, O reader, can you comprehend this wonderful heroic story of Sri Ramakrishna? From a materialistic point of view, you determine the weight and worth of a thing by weighing it or by counting it. How can you fathom a subtle power that completely uproots selfishness and egoism, making it impossible for one's body and mind to indulge in even a little self-aggrandizement? If Sri Ramakrishna touched any metal, whether consciously or unconsciously, his hand would become numb and incapable of holding that object. If he tried to return to his place and with even a flower, a leaf, or another trifling thing without the owner's permission, whether or not he was aware of it, he would invariably lose his way and walk in the opposite direction. Now this is something that these disciples of Sri Ramakrishna have time and again seen, that how his life was put in that kind of mold. So this is what is described here. It is now there is a very small part of this chapter is left, but yeah, we may take it up some other time. I don't know when. Maybe we can have one more class on this, that is on 21st of this month, because next Tuesday there will be a special lecture, as you can see put on the that poster there. Pravrajika Prabuddha Prana, a senior nun from Sarda Mutt in India, is touring United States. She was American, born in this state of Washington, and Seattle and that place. But then she became deeply interested in the monastic life, and decided to go to India and become a nun in India rather than joining the convents here. So she comes to US from time to time. She had come here also earlier, but that time there was the lecture could not be arranged. So this time it is possible to arrange her lecture on coming Tuesday, and she will be speaking on an interesting topic about Sri Ramakrishna and the scholars, various scholars who came in touch with Sri Ramakrishna and what happened to them. So a very interesting topic. So please make it a point to come to attend next Tuesday's this lecture. So we will think about this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to voice it. Yes, any question? There is, oh, he has a question. Adi has a question.
So, hello?
Is it? Yeah, it is on, I think, yeah.
So, oh yeah. So after Sri Ramakrishna realized the highest in each path, how did he bring his mind down to the starting place of the next path that he began on?
Yeah, it is not possible for ordinary, let alone ordinary, I mean those who are in spiritual discipline, it is very difficult to complete the journey by one path. And so by completing it by one path, since he needed to show that all different paths lead to the same one goal, that was one of the needs of the present age. So he would bring his mind down and then go by another path. Just to, you see, give an analogy that it is you go to one place by one road, but then there are other roads by which also one can travel. So next time you come back and then you go by another path. So Sri Ramakrishna would come back to this state, but let us remember, coming back does not mean that he would be devoid of knowledge. He still would have the full blazing knowledge of the God immanent in all forms. But now, to realize it, he would take up another practice. Let me go by this path and let me see where do I get ultimately by by taking this path. And so he went by innumerable paths, and because of the purity of his mind, he could reach the goal of every path which is same in a very short time. For an ordinary human being with sincere aspiration to realize the truth, still it takes lot of efforts to gradually climb that path of spiritual practice and merge with God. Now that person's body is not going to come back. Even if it comes back, Sri Ramakrishna mentions that it won't last much. In 21 days, such body will just fall. So, this is how These avatars' bodies are separate. It is a very distinct case that they can retain their body, they can do sadhana by taking another path. So, Sri Ramakrishna thus followed so many paths in that life. He came back and then again went up. So, and then he had practice, so he could do it very fast. There was nothing strange now for him on that path, but the special features of those paths were still remembered by him, and then imparted the knowledge of that to show that, look, there are so many different paths by which one can realize the truth. Theoretically knowing it is one thing, but the authority that one gets by practicing that all these paths in one life brings that personal experience by which he could proclaim this truth, that yes, there are many, many different paths, as many opinions, so many paths. Yeah. That is how he could do it. That ordinary people will not be able to bring their mind down, but he could. It is like an expert, It is those, if you go to those Himalayan pilgrim places, like Kedarnath, Badrinath, if you go there walking, an ordinary person will be going there panting while climbing all that. That is a big road, some 12 miles steep climb. So, and then I remember when I went, so then after that we decided to take rest there, stay there for the night, and then next morning came back. No question of again going on the same track. But there are those who carry, the porters, who carry the burdens of, the things of others. They are so adept. They just lift all that and walk, and in a day they make multiple trips like that, because their bodies, they are suitable for that. They are used to it. So Sri Ramakrishna could climb and come back, again climb. So ordinary human being, once you did it, that's it. So it is like that. Any other question? Is there a question upstairs? Okay. So we shall conclude with the closing prayers. So please recite the closing prayer loudly. Charlie, now it is time to, use your voice. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.